Hello, my name is Jeremy Hardy. I am doing a presentation on my project plan for building a website. During this plan, we will cover initiation, planning, executing, control and monitoring, and closing. Thank you for listening. The initiation stage is the first stage of the project life cycle. In this stage, I will actually meet with the client and discover what it is they need and how I can help them. It's broken up into 5 points that I will go over here momentarily. The first part of the initiation stage is to meet with the client and talk about their needs and what would benefit them the most. I find that a coffee house is a great casual place to meet with clients. In the second part of the initiation stage, we will discuss my process, their budget, possible costs, and the entire scope of the project. During the third part of the initiation stage, this is where I try to get a feel for the client's brand and then create a style guide based on that. Here you will see an example of a brand style guide. You can see that there is a place where the logo is. You can see the different colors being used on the website. You can see the font that's being used, and you can also see what images might be used on there. During the fourth part of the initiation stage, this is where I'll be requesting any information, images that the client wants to use on the website. During the final part of the initiation stage, this is where we fill out the agreement forms and then we'll get started on the planning stage. The second stage of the project life cycle is planning. This is where I will gather my images, I will create a basic layout, some concepts, and a site map. This is broken up into 4 parts, and I will go over them momentarily. During the first part of the planning stage, I will be creating a basic layout and placing the labels where the images and text are supposed to be placed. Here you'll see a basic layout created in Photoshop. During the second part of the planning stage, we will be creating a site map to show the flow of the website. This is an example of a site map. It shows how the pages are supposed to flow. During the third part of the planning process, we'll be creating a concept layout with a placeholder image and fake copy. Here you will see an example of a concept layout or a dummy page. You can see that there it is, a little robot as a placeholder, and there is a lot of fake copy used in each of the columns. During the fourth part of the planning process, this is where I want to organize any graphics, images, videos, information that is provided by the client. Execution is the third stage of the life cycle of a project. This is basically where all the business gets done. During the first part of the execution process, we're going to be setting up the domain, the hosting, and security. In this slide, you will see a place on Bluehost where you can search for your domain. In this slide, you can see on Bluehost where you can actually compare the different configurations of your domain. Here you can see that you're able to compare the different hosting plans. Here you can see there's a place on Bluehost where you can actually get a domain privacy feature added to your hosting. Here you can see there's a place on Bluehost where you can get a SSL certificate. This lets your clients know that you are secure. In the second part of the execution stage, we're going to install and set up WordPress and other plugins needed. Here you can see there's a place on Bluehost where you can install WordPress. Here are a few plugins that I typically install on WordPress when I'm building a website. In the third part of the execution process, I'm going to ensure that the website is GDPR compliant and visually impaired accessible. Here you will see there's a plugin on WordPress that will allow your website to be GDPR compliant. Here you will see I'm using a plugin to make sure that all my images are accessible to the visually impaired. In the fourth part of the execution stage, I'm going to create a template for the pages needed. Here you can see a blank template that I created. In the fifth part of the execution stage, I will be using the template to create each page. Here you can see I'm editing a page with Elementor. In the final part of the execution stage, I will be customizing each page to meet the client's requirements. The controlling and monitoring stage is the fourth stage of the life cycle of a project. However, this stage is actually used throughout the entire life of the project. The first part of the control and monitor stage is basically keeping track of my time. This is an example of a program that will help you keep track of your time. The second part of the controlling process is to send a WIP or a WIP proof to the client so they can see what I'm working on. This is an example of a WIP, and it can be as simple as a screenshot. The third part of this stage is basically allowing the client to review the copy and the content to ensure that it's right. The fourth part of this process is to keep track of your expenses and sending the copies of the receipts to your clients. As you can see, this is going to be an expensive project. The receipts are really piling up. Now, the fifth part of this process is to meet with your client and discuss any possible changes. Hey, are there any changes that need to be made? The final part of this stage is to test for bugs on the website before it's launched. Okay, I'm testing the website. Where's the bug spray? The closure stage is the final stage of the project life cycle. This is the stage where you take care of all the last minute details before offboarding your clients. It's also a great time to make sure that you hold on to relationships, because who knows what might come in the future. In the first part of this stage, you want to meet with your client one final time to make sure that everything is okay. And remember, your local coffee shop is a great place to meet with clients. The second part of this stage is to let the client review and navigate through the site before they sign off on it. The third part of this process is to send a client an invoice. Once the invoice is collected, it's time to launch the site. The fourth part of this process is to follow up with the client and make sure everything is still going well. This is an example of a follow-up email. You may want to offer a maintenance or updating service package. It's also not a bad idea to offer content creating services for later needs. And lastly, make sure to keep in contact with the client and maintain a relationship with them. You never know what that relationship is going to turn into in the future.